Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Kimbyrleigha Live. I'm Kimbyrleigha, and this channel is all about new and current cases, trial analysis, and commentary. So if you like that kind of stuff, hang around. And if you're new here, it's nice to finally meet you. Look below for all the information on me, my other channels here on YouTube. And I also want to preface this video with you are welcome here. No matter whether you think Karen is absolutely guilty or not, we are here to analyze. We are here to keep an open mind and to be respectful and to be the 13th juror. So, we're going to look at all the information in the testimony and we're going to try to figure out what the jury might be thinking. So, be kind in the comments. We're not on trial. Let's just remember that. Thankfully, it's not us, right? I've missed all of you. It was a long weekend. It's been a long week. And I've managed to upset a lot of people with my comparison of Ted Bundy and Brian Koberger. I don't know. I mean, you really can't make his Google searches disappear, but of course, they could have just been his morbid curiosity that made him Google the Idaho murders and himself, or look up a song about being a criminal and watch videos about Ted Bundy, right? So I guess we shall find out. But I said alleged. I still think it's a little late to worry about me tainting the jury pool. I wasn't the person who leaked the info to a major media outlet, so I'll keep you updated on what's happening in that case. But today we are focusing on day 21. I'm one day behind all the time of the Karen Reed retrial. So let's jump in. I forgot. YouTube opened super chats, and I don't know if I'm going to be doing memberships that will follow, but please don't forget to at least like the video so that you can show YouTube that you like the content. And let me just show my husband's artwork because he made these and I wore it one time, but it's the Trust No One Club. You guys have done great on actually purchasing these the last time we were on. And we've got the little cub on the back. So that's what I was wearing that one day that I was trying to show you the back. So the merch link is below as well for support and love and appreciation. So this time, the prosecution called Dr. Judson Welcher. I've gotten so many messages on Discord from members on my other channel about this day in court. This was an accident reconstructionist and biomedical engineer. Oh, sorry, biomechanical engineer. And he was the key expert witness, likely the final witness for the Commonwealth's case. And mind you, he's from Aperture. You know, the same place where Mr. Burgess was from? Yeah. So, not really off to the greatest start, but the Commonwealth had Welcher highlight his dual expertise: vehicle crashes and human injury biomechanics, which was presented to help the jurors understand how John O'Keefe's injuries could have resulted from being struck by Karen Reed's SUV, which is, of course, the prosecution's theory. He testified all day, so it's all about him in this video. And members in my Patreon and YouTube members told me on Discord about the reenactment of sorts. We will get there, I promise. But day 21's testimony was pivotal because it capped off the prosecution's case with expert analysis, right? That's what the jury is going to be left with at the end. And Dr. Welcher's detailed reconstruction, if that's believed by the jury, it will strongly support the prosecution's theory that his death was caused by a vehicle impact rather than some cover up or alternate scenario, which could solidify the Commonwealth's case. So, jurors now have a scientific narrative to tie everything together: the broken taillight, the phone data, the timelines, the injury photos, into a coherent story of how this tragedy occurred. And honestly, I always call it like I see it. This was pretty convincing. I'll definitely point out some reasonable doubt here and there, but I have to be fair, and I watched this 5 times at different speeds to truly understand it. I watched it on 2 times, I watched it on 1. The jury only gets 1 shot, though, remember that. So a convincing final witness can have a lasting impression, and the prosecution is likely hoping that Welcher's testimony erased any reasonable doubt that was raised in the earlier weeks, and we know what we're talking about. But we haven't even gotten to cross-examination. I mean, today y'all did if you already watched it. So before he was even able to testify before the jury, there was actually a voir dire by Alessi, which was pretty intense. And by the way, that literally translates to speak the truth in French. That's the French words that I don't know how to pronounce correctly. But let's watch that first. And I did see some super chats. I have to upgrade my software, by the way, so that I can show the super chats on the screen. But I got super chats. Oh, let me fix them. Oh, Damaris gave me a super chat. Oh, Super chats are here. Yay. You're like my first super chat. That's awesome. Thank y'all so much. Just your presence is a present. How cheesy is that? And then we've got an, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. It's like the biggest super chat. Oh, and it's a little pair. So you can't see them on here, but I'm going to upgrade this weekend, I promise. So this super chat says, hold on, let me read it. I have to click on my screen. It says, thanks for being you with hearts popping out of his eyes. I know exactly which one this is. Sorry that I can't show it here, but I think it's on mobile. You guys can all see it. Thank you so much. Is it Anna Louise or is it Anna? Always want to get people's name right because mine's wrong a lot. But hello to everyone in the chat. Let's jump in. We're going to be listening to what I have planned for you today. I feel like a teacher sometimes. I'm like, I have my lesson plan. I don't know why my voice goes like that as a teacher. But hello, Marie. Hello, Winter Sky. Odamaris. Courtney, my best friend, is here. Hi, Zach. I will definitely be back to answer all your questions as they come in. But let's get started, shall we?
Who have you spoken to at the Commonwealth in the last 2 weeks? Anybody associated with the Commonwealth, who have you spoken to?
In the last 2 weeks, Mr. Brannon, Mr. Lally, Lieutenant Tully.
Anyone else?
I think Mary Ellen Gray,
Anyone else?
the tech person Cindy this morning.
And with regard to those conversations, what prompted those conversations? Who initiated them?
I was originally told I was going to have to be out here last Monday, so there was a whole flurry of conversations around that. I was initially told I may have to give all my rebuttal testimony on a whole huge data set I'd received.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir. My question was simply because we have a limited amount of time. Who initiated the conversations?
Oh, there were multiple conversations.
How many?
I have no idea.
More than 10?
I'm sorry?
More than 10?
Probably not.
All right, what did you discuss with, do you understand it's no longer Detective Lieutenant Tully, it's, as I understand, it's Lieutenant Tully? Did you have you said you had conversations with him, correct?
Correct.
When was the first conversation, how many, and what are the nature of those conversations?
Are you limiting it to the last 10 days or in total in my life?
Within the last 2 weeks.
I was like, in total of your life, it's a little extreme, but I get it.
Last 2 weeks. I believe it was when I got here on Saturday night, I informed them I had landed. And then Sunday morning, he gave me a ride over to the district attorney's office.
Checking on the volume. Let me know. Someone told me to turn it up, so I'm just making sure it's okay. So let me know if it hasn't corrected itself.
And what did you discuss from when you, did you have any discussions with Lieutenant Tully before Saturday, within the last 2 weeks?
Not to my knowledge.
What did you discuss with Lieutenant Tully? Topics.
Give me a time frame.
I keep saying the last 2 weeks. That's the time frame I'm looking
all
at.
the conversations I had with him?
Yes.
Can you have somebody pick me up at the hotel?
I'm talking substantive, sir, about your outline, your PowerPoint presentation. Topics of, what discussions about the topics in your PowerPoint presentation?
I had no discussions with him about the topics of my PowerPoint presentation.
Who did you have discussions with from the Commonwealth about the topics in your PowerPoint presentation?
Mr. Brannon and Mr. Lally.
Describe those conversations and how many you had, including the first one that you had.
Well, I originally submitted my presentation with my original report way back, I believe, in January.
Right. I'm asking for conversations within the last 2 weeks.
Okay, your question wasn't clear. Then on Sunday, we just went through top to bottom through my presentation. Mr. Brandon wanted to make sure he understood everything in it. And then I met with Mr. Brandon again on Sunday. We ran through it briefly again. And then that was largely it.
Who suggested the changes to your presentation?
Mr. Brandon.
Mr. Brennan suggested the changes that you make.
He indicated some of the things, for example, the slide I deleted referenced testimony that I was not allowed to include on a slide.
Were there any discussions with anybody from the prosecution team about the changes with regard to the what I will call the Dighton route, the Dighton distance, and the total mileage? Do you know which slide I'm referring to, sir?
I do, yes.
Who initiated the discussion on the changes to that slide?
So that slide was changed, I don't know, probably 8 or 10 days ago.
Oh, it was changed 8 or 10 days ago.
Correct.
Were there any changes made from 8 or 10 days ago to what's now in your presentation?
Not beyond what we talked
Oh,
about.
okay. So 10 days ago, those changes were made.
8 to 10
8 to 10
days ago. I could actually probably figure out exactly when, if you like.
Now my next questions go to Mr. Burgess. Mr. Burgess is a colleague of yours at Aperture, correct?
Oh,
Correct.
this was interesting.
Are you aware of issues relating to the accuracy or inaccuracy of his CV?
Unfortunately, I've been bombarded with emails that have referenced that. I've seen it, I have not read them.
You've been bombarded with them, but you have, and you say unfortunately, but you have not read any of them? None?
Maybe 1 or 2 lines. For example, they come in, they're looking like legitimate business emails, and then I pull it up as a business email. I'm like, okay, I'm not supposed to do this. Court said I can't look at this.
Now, I want to go back to your slide presentation. I understand that you intend, subject to our objections at the court's ruling, you intend to present testimony with regard to your PowerPoint where you are going to elaborate on your 1231.
I think you get the picture. I just wanted to kind of highlight that he asked him questions, and I was like, "Sir, why is this so complicated in your life?" No, the 2 weeks, I think it was clear, but that was pretty much it. He confirmed multiple conversations with prosecution members, mainly to clarify content with Mr. Brennan specifically, and he suggested some edits to what he said were inadmissible references. But then the conversation turns to Mr. Burgess. Of course it did. And then he said he was bombarded with emails, but he didn't read them. Well, maybe 1 or 2 lines. The court said that he can't look at it, so he's not going to look at it. And then he made changes based on Mr. Burgess's May 8th report. Remember that one? The one updating the critical timeline trigger, the 12/31/38 to 12/31/43. Remember all that? So this influenced timing around the alleged collision. So Welcher clarified that his data corrections were driven solely by Burgess's updated findings. Remember the supplemental report? Right, that he said he first created on his own, but then he's like, wait, that was a copy paste where I said, here are the changes you wanted. That change. So if Burgess hadn't changed his report, then Welcher said he wouldn't have changed his. And I thought that was important, so I have that for you, I think. Yeah, it's right here.
Correct. So, and you understand, sir, that that change has significant effects on the very issues in this case with regard to the timeline and the collision you allege occurred, and comparing it to human volitional conduct of Mr. O'Keefe with regard to his manipulation of the phone. You understand the consequences of that change, do you, sir?
I do. I would disagree with your assertion that it's consequential. Again, my original data, which is in my PowerPoint and has not changed, that data is still there. The timing was extremely close within the error of the measurements, which Mr. Burgess ultimately showed in his subsequent report that was within the variance associated with those timing devices.
I understand, but my point, sir, and I want to understand if I have it correct, is that is going to move the time that you assert the 1162-2 trigger occurred, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree that's a substantial change given the issues in this case when seconds matter, or do you think it's an insignificant change?
I wouldn't say it's insignificant. Again, I haven't modified my PowerPoint at all. I was happy with the data I had and satisfied with the data I had. Again, once presented as engineer would with better data, we use better data. I'm sorry.
Please, Sir Fawadian, let him finish.
Yeah.
It brings it closer in time to Ian Whiffin's last contact point data. But even if we don't have that, given what I knew about the variance in the cell phones, my time was still within that window anyway.
Sir, you've just answered my question, which is, you agree that
He's like, good.
it affects the timeline in the activity of Mr. Whiffin's report. You said brings it closer. Did I have your words correctly?
Yeah.
Correct. What I was concerned about was your word about significant change. It brings it closer. It doesn't necessarily bring it significantly.
I think it's pretty significant when seconds matter, but he acknowledged that this timing change brings the trigger event closer to the victim, John O'Keefe's last phone activity. And this highlights the significance of this adjustment. But he said it wasn't drastic enough to alter his conclusions, according to him. And ultimately, Welcher confirmed that due to updated timing, the text stream data's trigger overlaps with the phone lock event, the 12/32/09. We're going to get there. And that makes it more consistent with the timeline presented by, of course, the prosecution. Right? I think that's important.
Comment.
But my question, sir, is the change means now that with the Mr. Burgess variance moving, you now have part of the moving range that occurs after the device lock, whereas before your change, the device lock occurred after every bit of your range of 1162.2. I have that correct, don't I, sir?
You do.
Okay.
So
Okay. So that was the questioning outside of the jury. Because remember, this isn't cross yet. We're still one day behind. Sorry that I'm one day behind, but I'm doing my best. I'm still practicing. Y'all are here for me, and I appreciate that. But the trigger event conveniently happens before John locks his phone now, right? So, what are your thoughts on that? Again, outside of the presence of the jury, but now they're being brought back in. And Welcher introduced himself as an expert, accident reconstructionist, biomechanical engineer, explained accident reconstruction involves vehicle physics. Hopefully he's got, and he does, more education than, who was it, Trooper Paul. However, we're going to get to the spin again because there's a spin in this case too. I mean, in his argument. But he just talks about how the biomechanical aspect analyzes forces, impacts on the body, and he outlined his extensive qualifications, his education, professional history, including a PhD. I think it was from USC, and I think he lives in California. And he has multiple peer reviewed studies on crash dynamics, pedestrian impacts, and even the vehicle event data recorder analysis. So I don't think we have to argue. He's definitely qualified. And then he listed all of the materials that he reviewed for his investigation: police reports, videos, crime scene documents, GPS, cell phone data. I mean, the list goes on. The infotainment and Toyota tech stream, medical records. And I think it's important to listen to that part. So I'm going to play it for you.
Or it's irrelevant.
In this case, can you share with us materials generally that you looked at in your review?
Sure. Your Honor, may I read from my report?
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't know why it's blurry. That's not me.
So, Mr. Reporter, I apologize. It's a lengthy list.
Odemira
Slow.
said the setup of this courtroom kills me. It does.
So I
It's very
have,
weird.
Police reports, including the Canton PD incident report, and I have 8 other reports, also the 34 Fairview Road Rams final report, or CARS report. I have the Ring video from Mr. O'Keefe's residence. I believe that's One Meadows. I have the cruiser cameras, which are the police vehicles, onboard cameras, both front and rear cameras from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I believe 10 different videos. I have photos and videos of the scene from Sergeant. I have photos of the vehicles, 140 photographs of the vehicles lined up together. I have 25 additional
I haven't seen today's trial yet. Don't tell me. I'm just kidding. I don't care about spoilers.
photographs of the scene, 18 separate photographs of the scene, 2 photographs of the scene, 1 group of 92 of the scene, 1 group of 50 of the scene, another video showing the cars lined up bumper to bumper, 4 videos of the scene, I have a video showing Miss Reed's vehicle being pulled into the Sally Port at the Canton Police Department. I have a 360 diagram, surveillance video files from McCarthy's, surveillance video files from Waterfall Bar, Canton Police Report, Sally Port videos from Dighton. I have the Lexus Connect Verizon records. I have the alarm.com videos. I have a video of the tow truck arriving at the Canton Police Department. One titled Native Location, John O'Keefe's phone. Past witness statements. The report of examination from the coroner. Jennifer McCabe's Cellbrite data. Something called Lexus Infotainment. Different past summary testimony of numerous witnesses.
Hi, JB. I think this is a strong witness. I'm going to get to that. Also, Laura said she wants my opinion on this. Don't worry, you're going to get it throughout this presentation that I'm doing. Like I said, I thought this was a strong witness. We're going to get into more of that, but I do see reasonable doubt. We're going to get into that. I'm going to call it like I see it, but I do think he's been the strongest witness so far. But I don't know he's proven anything. So let's just keep going. We're not fighting in the comments or anything. We're just going to view it, and I'm going to bring things up that I saw, and you can bring things up you saw, and you can always change my mind on things. That's what I'm here for. Me and my best friend don't always see eye to eye. She's in the comments. He's seen a lot of documentation, but what I was going to say, he's basically seen everything, right? The Commonwealth side, though, because I didn't hear him say the ARCA reports, unless I missed that. Or what about any of the defense's information about the case? That all sounded like state police information, videos, lab reports. So I was just curious about that, but it did sound like a lot. So, he's looking at a lot of data. And if you're wondering what he meant by both vehicles bumper to bumper, he's talking about Reed's Lexus and John O'Keefe's Traverse. Because recall, there's a video of her impacting his car. We're going to get there. But he told the jury that he personally inspected Karen Reed's Lexus, John O'Keefe's vehicle, and crime scene. He ran their VINs, and he knew everything about their cars according to him, and created 3D laser scans of the vehicles and conducted his own text stream data downloads because he wanted to make sure they were accurate. He even put his initials where his data is on other graphs that has information from other experts, right? But I think he went above and beyond by purchasing a 2021 LX, 570, the exact year, make, and model of Karen's SUV to make sure he was conducting the tests accurately. And he's going to show you how he conducted his investigation, starting with the Traverse and the Lexus and the laser scans. I think this is pretty interesting testimony. I think it's compelling. So let's listen to that. Please be nice to everyone in the comments. Remember, pretend we're jurors. Jurors are not going to agree. They're not going to get mad and mean they could, but it's not respectful. And in the setting, imagine we are in the jury deliberation room at some point and we're just talking to each other about what we think and what we observed. So keep it nice. Let's listen.
Sure. So on September 23rd, I had an opportunity to come out. Mr. Brandon, was the first time I ever met you on that day, I believe. And
I don't know why it's blurry. I'm hoping it kind of recalibrates itself.
I had received material before that. And what you see here is, this is my inspection.
There it goes.
Of Miss Reed's vehicle. In the upper left photograph, you'll see, oh, this doesn't work very well. Upper left photograph, that's Miss Reed's vehicle, that's Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle, the Chevy Traverse, and then what you see here is a laser scanner. You can see it on the ground here. Laser scanner is creating a 3D model of the vehicles, so I use that to create a 3D model of the vehicles. You can see me in the upper right photograph. That watch is this watch right here, my Garmin watch. And what I'm doing is looking at.
Can someone tell me what the Garmin watch is for? Or is that just like a weird flex? Because he's like, I also have a Garmin. I looked it up and I was like, okay, is that GPS related? Because I remember Garmin's for cars. Let me know if you know.
The construction composition of that right rear corner of the bumper. I'm looking at things such as the dimensions, where various lights and components are, and how does the geometry of that bumper relate to things that would be hit when backed into.
Dr. Welcher notes this is 9/23/94. Is that an accurate date of when you came and first started looking at the vehicles in the area?
So as you can see, this is Karen's vehicle after the headlight was totally removed, just FYI. Garmin watch, let me know. It reminded me of Go Go Gadget watch as a kid. Anyone, Inspector Gadget? Let's hope this guy's a little bit better at investigating, which I now know he is. So, but I just wondered what his Garmin watch was for. But he does point out that he sees a scratch from Karen hitting John's Traverse. And finally, someone is at least acknowledging, and I know we have the video, but that there was an impact. But let's listen to this because I think this is when I started feeling like he was being pretty compelling, in my opinion. Let's just look at this part.
You're welcome. So again, looked at the height of it. I mentioned this lower taillight. Notice how the structure of the bumper protrudes out. You can see one of the marks, which is consistent with the contact to Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle. Here, this scratch mark, or scuff mark. Notice how close it is to this light. Again, some of the evidence, stickers. Just a better view of those, then going down the side of the vehicle. So with all that information, I mentioned a laser scan. So you move this laser scanner, and each minute and 51-second scan is collecting about 50 million data points. And so you scan all the way around, and then what you do is you merge all that data together. So even though this looks like a poor photograph, what you're seeing is hundreds of millions of photographs, hundreds of millions of points. And so you literally can figure out, if you wanted to know the distance from this lug nut to where the lighter is on the ashtray, you could probably do that to an accuracy
I was like, sir, is there really a lighter on the ashtray? Like, don't they not do that anymore?
of about 2 to 3 millimeters. So really, taking tons and tons of data. So it knows the exact position of every one of these millions of data points, and it knows the color associated with those data points.
Why is that data imaging so important in accident reconstruction?
You want to have an accurate model of the car.
So this is a lot, right? And it's an abundance of data. He even said that. But I think the most important part comes next. He explained the two systems. We've heard about them before. Pretty much the black box, which is the event data recorder. And then we also talk about the text stream. And the black box doesn't actually show a collision. But he says this is expected because pedestrian impacts don't necessarily get clocked, right? And then you got the text stream system. That's for capturing maintenance-based events, but it is critical to his reconstruction. And we're already familiar with that. But he did point out that the event data recorder, I'm just going to call it black box system, isn't really designed for pedestrian impacts. I thought that was also important because, again, I'm trying to look at things on both sides.
Although you can hardly read it here. Again, I mentioned there are two systems on this vehicle. This is the CDR system or EDR system. There's also the text stream. The EDR system, this system is primarily to manage the safety components, protect the occupants of the Lexus. So things like fire the airbag, fire what's called a pretensioner, keep track of the severity of the crash to decide whether we need to fire the airbag. So it's not really designed for pedestrian impacts. So when we downloaded this vehicle, we got what's called a none file. A none file simply means that there's no.
I have to laugh sometimes because I was thinking like a none like none your business, but I know none. They got nothing because it didn't show a collision, no data indicating an impact. Okay.
Data there. The system's working properly. We had no fault codes, but for a car hitting a pedestrian to cause a file here, this is really more designed for car-to-car impacts. something that's going to have a significant impact on the occupant of the Lexus.
I think this can, I'm just showing both sides. I think this can put some reasonable doubt in jurors' minds because you're thinking, well, come on. Like, if she hit him hard and it's even if it's a pedestrian, like, how does it know? What if it was a wall? He's, 6'1", 216 pounds. Couldn't that have been a pole? So I think that does inject some reasonable doubt. Just my opinion. This is just my opinion. Don't come at me. But again, strong witness. Next, he looked at John's vehicle and he did the same scan. And then he put Karen and John's cars together. And we're going to see that happen, right? If I got it at the right part, here it is.
Vision system. Looked at Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle, same thing, took a series of photographs, laser scanned it, looked in it, underneath it, behind it. I mentioned taking some of the bumper parts off. So I took this rear cover off here to look at the damage behind the bumper cover. Most cars have what's referred to as a face bar. That's that piece of metal that you see here. And there's a piece of energy absorber here. That's your face bar.
Makes me want to get a Garmin watch, but I don't know why I want one.
So I'm looking to see if there's any damage to that. There was no damage to that.
Before you go forward, I want you to take a couple steps back because I want to ask you some questions to explain
Please.
text stream data. Could you go back a couple slides, please?
Sure.
Okay. You mentioned that in the EDR, which is similar to a black box, there was no information found. And then you mentioned a different system, the text stream. Can you make it clear for us how these systems are different and where they're stored on a motor vehicle?
Sure. I mean, a lot of data is stored in a similar location. The text stream system was originally...
Sorry, I keep touching my keyboard. I was trying to get here.
So before we had the exact angle of impact. Again, this is for looking at when Miss Reed contacted Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle backing out of Mr. O'Keefe's garage at One Meadows. I lined them up just to generally show the approximate location. A couple things. You notice how, again, this lower portion of the Lexus bumper sticks out. Notice how the side of the Chevrolet slopes in as you get higher up. So this portion sticks out more than this portion. And this is where you would expect any contact damage to occur, assuming there was an impact. So again, looking at the measurements up the height of the vehicle, of course, as you indicated, Mr. Brennan, the taillight's gone. And then went to the...
Okay, before we get to the scene, I'm going to give you my initial thoughts and then how my thoughts were changing as I went along. Because when I first saw this, I was like, look, I saw her hit the car. I watched the Ring camera footage. However, I edit videos all the time. I'm a video creator. I look at these things. I know how to clarify things, bring things in. I'm not using their systems. But once it was clarified and I could see a little bit sharper, I was shocked. I will say that. But we're going to get there. I keep saying we're going to get there because I don't want you to think like I'm going to keep you on your toes here and tell you what I thought. But I was like, is this making sense to them? And then how do you know what portion of her car, hit? That's what I was thinking. I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I get it. But then he went to the scene and they created a computer model. And I don't know, he said he took like 300 pictures. And again, I was like, what's that going to do? I didn't understand what it would prove. How's that going to prove that Karen hit John O'Keefe? We've seen the front of this house like a million times at this point. But I'm listening and I'm waiting. And it's all about positioning and all that. So let's go to that because I think it's important.
Scene. So same thing, went to the scene, took, again, 297 photographs of the scene, had our people scan it to create a computer model of the scene.
Look at that.
So, literally, if you wanted to know the distance from this window to, say, some manhole cover
I
on the
do.
road, we have the data to figure that out, down to a couple millimeters.
I heard them actually say that he was, oh my gosh, I'm going to mess it up if I say it wrong. Was it 7 feet? 7 feet from the road? I have some photos to show you later, and we'll get to that. I did get a super chat. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Let's see. Let me make sure I'm saying your name right. Sassy. Can I just call you Sassy? I truly enjoy every single channel. Also, I'm a member of your main channel, and this one's coming along amazing. I believe she's innocent. That was Sassy saying that. I don't know what I believe yet because I'm back and forth all the time. But I thought this was important because we're going to have to talk about being it down to a couple millimeters, and it makes sense. And then there's this whole conversation about the mileage and how many miles the car had on it when it came to the Sally port. And they went into all this information about which route she took. But see, I know from the first trial, she took the Canton Library route from 34 Fairview to 1 Meadows, which is John's house. And then from there to Jen McCabe's back to John's. And then they took Carrie's car, went driving around. And afterward, she drove her car from John's all the way to her parents' house, where it was later towed. So they did the math. It came to 36 miles. And that's important because they're showing all the mileage throughout her route. And then they're going to deduce how many feet she went and this and that. And that all had to do with mileage and GPS and everything. But here we go to this next thing. I think this is important. The text stream on the night in question. He says one of the ways they figure out when and where whatever happened, it calculates the mileage, the GPS, and the trigger event on the system and on John's cell phone. So a lot of data points, which is either going to be confirmatory or confusing for the jurors. And at this point, I think it's the latter. I think it would be confusing, but I digress. Let's go to the next one.
That corresponded to a GPS location that looked like it was outside the Waterfall Grill on Washington Street. So additional cell phone data that we had is that we knew there was a 3-point turn made when the Lexus passed Fairview on Cedar Crest, pulled into a driveway, and made a 3-point turn. So what you see over here is GPS data from Mr. O'Keefe's phone. And with that information and knowing when the system turned on, we're able to now tie the text stream data to a real clock, meaning what time of day did that text stream trigger occur. So we're going from the running clock to a real world clock. So if you take when it was turned on for Mr. Burgess's report, you can see that the Lexus was turned on at 12:12:36. You add in the
I want to go slow here because this is important. And I think me being someone who watched it so many times, I now understand a lot of it. So this text stream starts whenever Karen turns on her car. So that's when it starts. And then it'll go until her car is turned off. And that is like one entire session, let's just say. I think they're calling it something else. But this was really, really convincing to me to hear this part. When I was looking at this, I was like, this is making sense. I like this part. I understand this part. My daughter's calling me, so I might have to pick up my, oh, she stopped calling.
text stream information. You get it at 12:23:38. And now we have a cell phone data point at 1:54.
So it looks like 12:36. They're leaving the waterfall. And we know that Karen did the 3-point turn. So that is what he's using as this first trigger point, the 3-point turn. And that was around 12:23:38. We're going to hear that. She confirmed it was on Cedar Crest Road. They're checking the phone, the GPS, and of course, Mr. Burgess's report and the interview that Karen gave. So here we go.
At the time my report was written in these slides back in January, that was all the information we had in terms of data point 154. That was the one that was closest in time to it. So we had since received additional information.
Dr. Welch, let me ask you a couple questions, and if you can zoom in a little, we might be able to see it a little better from here.
Where would you like it?
If we can start at the top when you explain in text. You told us that.
So before we go to the next part, I just want to tell you he's going to talk about how he's turning all those seconds because we don't look at seconds. That's not normal. We want to look at times. And he's going to change that into actual times. And then I just told you they did that by the GPS, John's cell phone, the infotainment system, and so on and so forth. I think this is a really good timeline, which is important for their case because they're trying to prove when or that Karen supposedly hit John within a time frame. And there was also trigger number 2, and that's going to be when the car is backing up. And they believe that is a collision event, but we'll get there.
The text stream data does not have an actual clock. It has a running clock, like a stopwatch.
Correct.
And then you mentioned that after you received information from Mr. Burgess, you could put an actual time onto it. How do you do that?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
You shared with us that the text stream data runs on a running clock.
Correct.
And then you received further information so that you could actually identify a time. Where did you receive that information from?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow that.
That was from Mr. Burgess's report.
And do you know where that information came from?
That came off the SD card, I believe, in the infotainment system.
So he's just confirming where the information came from. I actually want to jump ahead.
-1. So what we have is we have the cell phone data, the original cell phone data on the right-hand side. And then from that text stream data, we have whether it's going forward, we have the speeds, and we have the steering angles. So from that information, we ran a simulation to show you what the text stream data means. This is what the 10 seconds of data is. And again,
When they showed this simulation, I was like, finally, I'm very visual. And I was like, okay, this is good. They have a point of reference. I like things that make sense to me. I can see it on the screen. She's making the 3-point turn. I know this is simulation, but what I'm saying is they're coordinating all the data. They're putting it together. We know it happened.
Again, just because the simulation stopped, that's just where the text stream data ends. Again, as we showed you earlier, that the car's still moving. That's just the last data point we have. So what that text stream data shows is matching a 3-point turn on that Cedar Crest Street.
This is also really important. It's not just to be fancy and show something like this. It's to confirm and then reinforce the alignment between the text stream data, the GPS, the cell phone data to show they know what they're talking about when it comes to the time. Okay, because if they can calculate when the 3-point turn happened, then they can calculate when the next event happened. That's the most important one. And again, just because the car stopped in the simulation, as he explained, the system only shows you 5 seconds before the event and 5 seconds after. I actually did a case on my main channel, I think maybe 2 weeks ago. And if you want to watch that, it's the one about the girl in the car. I forget what it was called, but there was a black box in her car. They did the same thing to try to figure out what happened to her because she just vanished in the middle of the highway. And that's the same thing. They had a little bit of the recording before the event and after the event. So I was already familiar with this. It doesn't mean the car stopped there. It's only going to show those events. So pay attention to this next part because this is what we've kind of all been waiting for. He carefully analyzed the data for the trigger to explain the Lexus has a rapid backwards acceleration up to 23.9 miles per hour at a 74% throttle. This was what I thought was very significant. It is. I just think it's interesting. But also, there was wheel slippage. I looked this up because I wanted to get the actual definition. It's literally when your wheels spin or slides on a surface, loses traction. We know there was snow. We know the pavement's wet. I don't live in a place that has snow, so let me know what you think is happening here. Minimal braking, none at one point, which is important because this aligns so closely with the event the prosecutors are saying happened, that Karen intentionally backed up into John. So I know this could be confusing, but and he's got this whole graph that you're going to see, and it's like, whoa, it's a lot of information. He's going to read it from left to right. It's going to talk about braking. It's going to talk about acceleration, about mile per hour. And all this comes from the Lexus, according to him. So let's take a look and let him discuss. And then we'll discuss.
I've highlighted a shift from drive to neutral to reverse.
I'm sorry, you're going to need to zoom that in so we can see it.
Absolutely.
Here, he's going to show the graph.
We have information on the brake switch, brake oil pressure.
And you can see what I said from left to right. Look at his initials at the top. That's showing that that's the data he collected and added to this report. Speed, distance traveled, distance and feet, acceleration, engine RPMs, shift position. You've got 0, 1, and 2. I drove a stick shift back in the day. She's in neutral. 1 is what? Forward, 2 is reverse. I'm just guessing here. You've got the braking, the brake pressure. I found this to be significant in my opinion. Is it going to equate to me thinking there's no reasonable doubt? We'll get to that.
We have the acceleration data here. And then from that information and using the acceleration data, calculating the speed at which it's backing up. The reason we have slightly different calculations here is we have some evidence that the wheel's slipping on the ground. So we need to use the accelerometer because the wheel speed is simply telling you the speed of the wheel. It's like if you're stationary burning rubber, the speedometer reads a certain speed.
I know there are a lot of people that think that this just was that. It was just that. It was her wheel spinning. I want to get to some of the comments real quick. Laura said, I couldn't be a juror because he's so off-putting. I'm still a reasonable doubt. The arm, the tail light was eye-opening for me because that whole dog drama. And JB said these cars are technically advanced, and they are. Lala said, or Lala? It would seem so until the defense basically tears down everything it says. That's what's so important. And I always tell people this. I'm like, let's wait till we hear everything. But it is fun to go back and forth. And I really appreciate these conversations because it's important to look at, right? Have you ever been a juror?
You're not going anywhere. But the accelerometer tells you how much the vehicle's moving. So from all that information, we get information on how far the vehicle's traveled. We've done it in terms of total travel distance. We've done it relative to the start position.
I'm going to ask you to start on the columns on the left and take us through the information that you have.
Brendan is talking so softly, so I'm sorry about that. We're going to get there. I keep saying we're going to get there. That's like my new phrase.
Regarding this second triggering event. So if you can scroll all the way to the left.
All the way to the left?
Yep. Okay. So the first column regarding time, could you remind us again what that is?
So again, that's the continuous running clock.
And the second column in blue?
That's where I take that time and convert it to what we more commonly use, minutes and seconds.
And now we have a key cycle event, different than the 3-point turn. What's the number?
So this is now 1162-2. So again, it's technically in the system the same key cycle.
Don't get caught up in this. I know it's a little bit technical here.
I've called it 1162-2.
And the red number next to it to the right?
That's the mileage. So it's actually at the same mileage as 1162-1. So we know, obviously, they're within the same mile.
If you can scroll over a couple of columns. From your data, can you tell during that event how far the Lexus traveled?
He wants to know how far the Lexus traveled. I don't know if you can hear Brendan. I can hardly hear him.
During
Yes.
that event?
Yes.
And how do you do that?
So we have accelerometer data. We have velocity data or speed data back here. I've corrected for what you see down here is, and I go through this on a later slide, but Right here, you can see a significant increase in RPMs, but yet the acceleration is dropping. So what that means is if your RPMs are going up and the speed's going up, that means you should be accelerating more. But what happens because the acceleration is dropping, that means what's actually happened is the wheel's slipping.
Okay, so we know that the wheels were spinning, right? He's saying slipping. I'm going to say spinning because to me it makes more sense that it's spinning. So her tires are spinning, right? So on one hand, people have argued, oh, her tires were just spinning. That's why it's going 23.9 miles per hour because it's her tires and she's not going anywhere. But then he's going to show you that there is movement in this area according to him. So that's interesting.
So what I've done is I've used the accelerometers data to calculate the speed once the vehicle is put into reverse. And once we know the speed, again, feet per second, we know every data point is half a second. So speed times time tells you how far you moved. Feet per second, feet divided by seconds times seconds gives you feet.
Remember that we can rewind and the jury cannot rewind. That's why I'm going to tell you, I think it's confusing to them. I mean, even with him just saying like seconds this and it, I almost don't want to know how he got there, but it's so important to know how he got there, right? But I was thinking if she was going that fast, like JB said, if she hit him, I don't think it was intentional though. Or JB said she did hit him. I don't think it was intentional though. I don't know yet. I don't know yet. I hadn't been convinced in the first trial. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next. But just don't hate me for saying that if she was going that fast, that's pretty fast to back up. But people have said that's just her tire spinning. Maybe she wasn't going that fast. But there were minimal breakage and 74% throttle. He repeated this several times, meaning pedal to the metal. She's not stopping. She's putting her foot down. And it started at 13 miles per hour. That's, when they started looking at the trigger event. So there could have been some starting point, obviously 5 seconds before, because remember, it doesn't start till 5 seconds before and then after. So it's like it started out and it kept going. And then she gets up to about 24 miles per hour. We don't know her ultimate speed because it only shows that 5 seconds after. She could have kept going, sped up more. We don't know. But that we don't know part is important because that can mean reasonable doubt. But that's another question that they're not really going to be able to answer is like, well, you'll get to it, but he's going to tell you later that it's like they don't know exactly where it was or where he was, and that gets me kind of confused. But there was a period when her tires were spinning without moving, but the velocity was calculated, and he showed that the position that she was in at a certain time, and he's going to show you the thing that was on my thumbnail. I hope this is making more sense than it's confusing you. But there was a point where she was not braking and she was doing 74% throttle and her vehicle kept going. And he's going to emphasize the exact timing of this trigger event and the lock event. So let's get to that.
So similarly, using this information to then try to tie it back to the cell phone data to make sure we have the real-time information. Again, this was written back in January before I got the additional information. So what you can see is, I'll zoom in.
He had
we're now talking about trigger.
He had to reconcile the clocks. We've done this like 40 million times, but he had to reconcile the clocks.
11:62:2. We know that that's 18 minutes that the vehicle's been on, 18 minutes, 57 seconds, 19 minutes, 2 seconds. This is the range. Again, the plus or minus 5 seconds. The 19 minutes, 2 seconds is when the trigger occurred. Infotainment system, adding those two together, 12:36, plus the 19:7.5 indicates the end of 1162-2 is at 12:31:43.
That 123143, is it based on the Lexus clock from the infotainment system?
It is. It would need to be corrected to the O'Keefe cell phone data.
And when you reconcile that variance of 21.29 seconds, what is the time?
You end up with 12:32:04. So if you simply take this and add 21 seconds to it and add 29 seconds to it, so you get between 12:32:04 and 12:32:12.
Okay, so we had to reconcile the clocks again to get this new time, which is big for the defense. Like, you have a new time now, but it's between 12:32:04 and 12:32:12. So now it could have happened a couple seconds after John locked his phone. And like JB said, it'll come down to the experts, and I have a comment to make about that. The effectiveness of this witness's testimony will depend on how the jurors perceive him. And that's going to happen after cross examination because they're going to have one perspective. And I haven't heard cross yet. I'm going to listen to it tonight when I'm putting my baby to bed. So glad you're here with me because I love talking about this stuff. And I always challenge people, like, change my mind. Show me what you're thinking. Why do you think that? We haven't even heard any of that yet, but it sounds plausible though. Still not sure if it's likely because there's a lot more that we're going to get to. But he's going to talk about everything he did to put into the simulation. And this was so helpful to me. So let's watch because I love visuals, as I've said so many times now. Also got a super chat. Coffee said, Kimber, you're so thorough and your content is stellar, not to mention you're absolutely gorgeous. A big hug. Aw, you're going to make me blush. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. All right, let's go and see this.
So similar to what we did on the first one, basically what we did is we took all the text stream data that we had, which includes the shifting, the forward, the reverse, and the steering. Again, there was a tiny bit of leftward steer, and put that into a simulation program where we're simulating what the Lexus will do. So we've taken into account the mechanical characteristics, the steering response of the Lexus. So this is to show what it represents on the left-hand side. So each one of these little hash marks, a different color, represents 10 feet.
This was really helpful. Like he just said, those different hash marks are 10 feet each.
Red lines show the extent of motion. Remember what I said, it initially pulled forward, then backed up, past its initial spot, and then went backwards further distance.
Back to 74.
Oops, I messed that up. Hang on.
So similar.
So sorry about that. I was going to say something and then I accidentally got crazy with my hands. Someone made a really good point. They were like, wait a minute. Weren't there cars parked there? So how did she pull forward and then go back? But then I guess maybe she pulled to the side if there was a car there. Pretty sure Hagen's Jeep was there. I'm pretty sure Jason Negel and his friends were there. So that did confuse me. And I haven't gotten to the cross-examination yet. So don't tell me if you already know.
Each one of these little hash marks, a different color, represents 10 feet. The red lines show the extent of motion. Remember what I said, it initially pulled forward, then backed up, past its initial spot, and then went backwards further distance. So what this shows is where we simulated this in a program called HVE. So that's the vehicle, the Lexus pulling forward. And then it accelerated in reverse, past its initial starting position, and came to rest.
Why would she do that? Why would she do that? I almost have to believe this part because it's part of the Lexus. And I'm like, okay, I know some people are gonna be like, I don't believe that garbage. But let's just for sake of argument, why would she do that? And the only thing my brain can do to reconcile that, this is very sad, but just this Memorial Day weekend, a father took his 15-year-old daughter who had a learner's permit over in Laguna Beach, and he was teaching her to drive in a parking lot. I like brings tears to my eyes, but it was on somewhat of a little bit of a cliff, Laguna Beach, and they're in the parking lot, and she had to mistake the brake and the gas, and she accelerated forward, and she couldn't stop herself. You know when you're like, wait, I'm going forward, no, I'm going back. I was there once, and now I don't drive my car intoxicated. I don't hardly drive, But I can see if somebody were, maybe there's that confusion. I'm not really sure, but my brain was thinking maybe that was it. And this poor girl that I was telling you about on Memorial Day, she went forward, she went through a fence, she went over the cliff, and the car went upside down, and her father didn't make it. And it's so heartbreaking. But this was an accident, right? And as I'm looking at this, I'm like, why would she pull forward and then pull back? Like, was there confusion? I can't get on board with it being intentional, but I've heard even Courtney was like, "It wasn't intentional if she did that." I don't know, it just looks strange to me.
right there.
Doctor, when you say it came to rest there, do you
I'm
have
sorry.
data that the defendant's Lexus stopped there?
No, it did not come to rest. That I misspoke. That's where the text stream data ends. As you can see here, it's still going.
Oh boy.
It's still going approximately 23 miles an hour when that ends. God damn it.
You'll have to zoom in on that so the jury can see what you're referring to. Please.
So again, as I mentioned, the text stream's taking a window of data. It doesn't take anything outside the window. You can see that when we account for the wheel slippage, that the vehicle at the time of the last data point, again, is at 74% throttle, 3,300 revolutions per minute, and is going backwards approximately 23.9 miles per hour. And you can see it's traveled a total distance backwards of 53 feet back from where it initially started, or if you consider where it pulled forward 34 feet and then backed up 53 feet, add those two together from the point it pulled all the way forward.
I just keep thinking, like, why did she pull forward and then pull backwards? And that's why I think some believe she did it intentionally, like she was mad or something and she saw him. But then somebody pointed out, I think it was Laura. Let me see this. Sorry if I'm behind in the comments. What about the reverse alert? Laura said, if he was behind her and she was backing up, wouldn't it have been beeping or ringing or whatever it does? Just a thought. My car does that. And it's annoying because it's like, I'm not even really near something. So that's what I brought up in one of the other videos. I was like, my husband's Subaru does that. And his is a 2019. So I would think at least a 2021 would be a little bit more advanced. But we're we're gonna get to the backup camera. Somebody mentioned we're getting to the backup camera. I hope you continue to be on here because I want to get there with you. We have a little bit more of this.
So this is 10, 20, 35, forward. And then I'll go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 3 back for a total of 87 feet.
Okay, do you see how it kind of curves backwards? My brain, if this is real data and it's accurate, which I'm just going to pretend I'm a juror and be like, okay, this is accurate. She does curve toward where the flagpole would be, right? And we don't know when she stopped. I think that's really important because I'm going to show you some pictures. I'm not going to forget. I made sure to make a note over here on a little sticky note that I'm going to show you.
So from the maximum point I pulled forward to where it backed up, again, that was 34 feet forward, then a total of 53 back, total travel distance of 87 feet. So went all the way forward where it stopped, it then backed up 87 feet. And when the text stream data stopped, it's still moving. It's still moving about 23 miles an hour, and you're still at 74% throttle.
I thought that was important. I'm going to end that part there, but I thought that was important because according to him, Karen Reed's Lexus moved forward about 34 feet, then reversed 53 feet aggressively, totaling 87 feet traveled in that moment, hitting approximately 23.9 miles per hour backward speed and almost at a little angle, which was close to where the grass would be, which makes it more plausible that if she hit John, he could have propelled into the grass near the flagpole. So I'm visual, and maybe you haven't seen some of these photos. I think it's important for us to just take a pause and look at approximately where John O'Keefe was on the snow. Because a lot of times, even in my mind, I imagine him way up on the yard. And I'm thinking, how in the world could he have flown all the way? But then Courtney and I were looking at some photos, really analyzing them. And you tell me, but it doesn't really look that far up. He's 6 feet tall. Remember that. So let's look at some of those. I put them here for you. Let's try to see what they look like. All right. So you've probably seen this a million times. This is 34 Fairview. I'm angling this photo over so that we can see the flagpole. Between the flagpole and the curb, which I guess they're going to be referring to as the curb, that little elevated area, it's not really that far. He said 7 feet today. Okay. I would like to see somebody measure that area, and I think I might have a photo of that. But let me show you this. I know that this is hard to see. Hold on a minute. I'm going to be putting marks on the screen. This is from the dash cam. On the right, that is Carrie's SUV with the open trunk. If you look carefully, the flagpole is to the left, and then you're going to see something on the ground to the right of the flagpole, and I'm going to circle it for you to make it make sense. Okay, let's just make this big because I'm not important in this viewpoint. The flagpole, I'm showing you there with an arrow. The car, there's the, what is that, a hexagon? And then you see that square rectangle? That is Karen over John O'Keefe. According to this video that I've slowed down so many times and looked at it again and again, she runs over. I paused the video. I took the screenshot because I wanted to know approximately where he was next to the flagpole. That's interesting. So then we've got this. This was on Reddit. It's not mine. I can't take credit for it, but this was like approximately where they said he landed. And, we're not seeing a scale here. We're not seeing a ruler. We can't really tell, but I'm just giving you a visual. I think that's really important. And then this was an actual exhibit from the last trial. And if you look carefully here, there's a lot on this diagram. We don't need to look at everything. It's a bird's eye view. We've got the 2 lanes of the road. Don't look at the clear plastic and this and that. Let's just look at what I made, which was the circle, the red circle, flagpole. And then that rectangle on the left is where John O'Keefe's final rest was. And then the glass cup is very close to his right. You've got the fire hydrant way down there. So forget that because some people are like, did he hit his arm on it? But look at where he landed according to where the road is. Not that far. So my brain was thinking about all that while I was watching this, which I think is important because I had to take into consideration what I've seen. So I thought it was really good to take a look at that. Somebody also said your explanations, Follow Your Dreams said your explanations are so helpful. Makes me wonder how the jury's processing without help. I'm guessing that we are like a jury and there's probably somebody there that we don't know what professions they're in. I heard that they're a little young on the younger side. But I think that there will be someone in deliberations that'll say, wait a minute, let's break this down. Because so far, I felt like it's pretty damning if this is all accurate. And now he's going to look at that impact that Karen's SUV made with John's Traverse. People have been saying, I want to get to this. I want to get to this. I also found this convincing. This was probably the most convincing thing for me because, like I said, it was clarified. The video was clarified. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. And then there's tire marks. He was given the ring camera footage from John's house. I'm probably going to say this wrong. Photogrammetric analysis. He's converting a 2-dimensional video into a 3-dimensional measurement, including frame rate analysis and all that. I don't think you have to know all of those details, but he does admit there was contact between the vehicles. So I'm glad that he pointed that out. Some people deny that. Let's go there.
So I had the video, just to show the provided video that I was given. So Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle. I don't know if you noticed, but there actually is contact between the vehicles.
So we saw that, I saw contact. I saw it in another video where they blew up the tire. We could see it up close, but that's the video he was given. And now he's going to line it up frame by frame. And this is when I got to see the tire tracks, which I thought were really important. I don't know why I never saw them before. Maybe because they didn't enhance the footage, but let's watch because that was important to me.
Frame. So here's frame 0. This is frame 265. We're 13 seconds into it. Here's frame 305. Notice you see brake lights on the back wall here. Notice how they're not super red because you still have reverse lights on. Now they all go off. So the Lexus brake lights have been turned off at frame 353. 356. Lexus brake lights begin to come on. 357, they're back on. Lexus comes to a complete stop at frame 369. 384, the reverse lights turn off. So now look how red this is because we no longer have the white reverse lights in it. And you can see the Lexus starts to drive forward.
Okay. This wasn't exactly like the case cracker to me or anything from like My Cousin Vinny, but I had to take a real hard look at this. There are the tire tracks. And a part of me was like, well, her SUV is wider than her tire tracks, I would have to assume, right? So I was like, okay, she could have still hit the car. But then he's going to do some more data analysis and it's going to get a little crazy. I think I'm far back with the comments, but Winter Sky said, I think he went into this analysis with a conclusion in mind and did everything to confirm that rather than following the data. It's kind of what I feel witnesses do sometimes, especially if they're hired like this, like hired guns, as they say. I feel like, they are being paid and they want to be used again. Let's see.
So frame 825, this is after the Lexus has left the scene. But notice the tracks in the snow. So we have very definitive locations.
If those tracks would have been pointed like right towards the back of his car, angling to the left more, it would have convinced me that her taillight hit it. Okay. Not that I'm not totally convinced, but all I'm saying is when I watched it 3 or 4 times. I looked at it and I was like, huh.
For the wheels of the Lexus. We lay over a grid on the various frames. So we then took the images and did what's called clarification, which is where you overlay images from multiple versions or multiple views of the same vehicle, and it helps sharpen the image, but it slightly dulls the color. So you get a little cleaner, crisper image.
I think JB was saying, was it JB? I'm trying to look because this was a really good point and I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts on it as another person. They said she called her elderly father in the middle of the night to tell him about the drunken night and what she thought she did. Well, how do we know what she was saying on the phone? So what I would say to that would be her boyfriend, like forget everything else because we have a person who was just hugging and kissing and loving on, even if she's a cheater or we have to put that aside. Whatever was going on, it wasn't happening at the time we saw them at the bar. Clearly, they were in good spirits. Her boyfriend died. So I would 100% not hold against someone to call their loved ones. She's very close to her parents. That's been made, everyone's aware of that. I don't I'm not using that as evidence of something nefarious or nefarious, like Jen McCabe would say, that she called her dad frantic. I think that's a natural reaction that actually to me shows that she's in an emotional state. Something has happened. And for all intents and purposes, to me, it shows she's in a vulnerable moment. She's scared. We can't really infer what they talked about either because we don't know that. We don't know what she said. But the gist of it was she was informing him of what happened. Could have been about her drunken night. Don't know if those would have been the words, but I think it's fine to have our own perspectives on it. But I just don't think that adds to her culpability in my perspective.
So here's Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle before clarification, after clarification.
Excuse me, Your Honor, pardon my interruption. Could we get numbers of the slides as we're toggling back and forth?
Sure.
Which one is
Absolutely. Okay, I'll make an effort. So slide 76. You're welcome. Going to slide 77.
You can hardly see this, but you see those little black things on the bumper? That's where the snow fell off. He showed wasn't there. I mean, the snow was there, then it fell off and it left those little marks. And you can kind of see it like in a linear section of the bumper right there on the top part. So that's what he was showing there. And it's like you'll miss it if you didn't look. And I kind of didn't really show the before and after very well. But yeah, it doesn't look that bad. Like frame by frame, because every day I edit videos, I'm able to understand what he's doing. I mean, I'm sure all of you can as well. It is not rocket science. But when you slow it down like that and you go frame by frame, which is actually what investigators do when they're looking at CCTV footage, they go frame by frame, like just pushing one, instead of playing it all the way through. And to me, it was like, wow, only a little bit of snow fell off. The tail light lighting up to me, focusing on where the car went. I saw the tire tracks. I just thought, like, wow, I really think that this proves, the impact wasn't severe. That's what he was trying to prove. You tell me. You tell me. I know we have varying thoughts, and that's okay. We're allowed to have varying thoughts. Don't get mad at anybody.
We have the tire tracks. We can create and take data points along the tire tracks, create a map of those. So green is the right rear. Again, the vehicle's backing out, coming, slide 87, coming out this direction, backing here, stopping, pulling. Pulling forward towards the bottom of the screen. Backing out here, pulling forward like here. Slide 88. So this is the Lexus lined up. This is when the Lexus has come to a complete stop. So this would be maximum engagement. Again, this is just toggling frame 88, showing that we have the time and the frame number. 369 on the same slide. We've now overlaid the Lexus laser scans on top of the image of the Lexus.
Interesting.
So there's the video image, a still image that we took from the video. And here's where we overlay the laser scan of the Lexus. So we've overlaid the laser scan of the Lexus onto the Lexus. We've overlaid the laser scan of the Chevrolet onto the Chevrolet. And we've overlaid the laser scan of the scene onto the scene. So now what that allows us to do, we now know the position of everything in there. And we've also tracked the position of the tire tracks. So that's what it looks like if you overlay the computer model of Miss Reed's vehicle onto the tire tracks.
Okay.
Oh, my apologies, Your Honor. Slide 89, and then I'm just toggling slide 89 where I turn the vehicle off so you can see how the tire positions match up. Another toggle of slide 89, how the tire positions line up with where the end of the snow was. From all that information, again, we lined it up in the video, we lined it up in the scene, we have the two vehicles.
For some reason, my brain did not calculate what was going on here. I don't know why, but Now I'm seeing it for the sixth time. So obviously, John O'Keefe's car is the one that's on the top. Karen Reed's the one on the right side. She's coming back. She's backing up. From what I saw on the ring camera, it really did look like her taillight just like rammed right into his taillight. But from this, it still looks like the taillight to me, to be honest, but that's just how it looking to me. But it looks like, she scrapes against the bumper. And then when you see where the snow came off and you see where the scuff mark is, you're like, yep, that's where it was. But how do we know it didn't crack? In his opinion, he said there was minimal contact between the Lexus and the Traverse, and that it was only going 1 mile, no, less than 1 mile an hour. That's what he was saying.
We can get the exact position of the vehicles when that Lexus stopped. So when that Lexus stopped, that's going to be the maximum engagement. So from that information, we can get the angle of the vehicle, we can get the degree of overlap, the impact configuration, and it's hard to see because of the angles and because these vehicles are not at right angles to each other, the exact contact. Now, I mentioned, and we're on slide 94 now, that contact on the rear of the Chevy Traverse. So you can see we actually, you can't see.
I thought this was helpful. He's going to show we have a few more to get to, so stay with me. I hope you will because it's going to get even crazier. But look at this.
So we took a whole bunch of data points within those two areas where the snow got dislodged, and we're looking at where that is. So if you look at that on the vehicle, so this is where it is on the rear of Mr. O'Keefe's Chevrolet. You can see it's about 25 and a half inches above ground, 32 and a half inches above ground. Here's Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle. So these marks are this is the Chevy Traverse words, are approximately right here. Again, I had the opportunity to inspect Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle. There's no damage where these marks are. So, sure.
So there's what he was saying, that there's no damage. It was going less than 1 mile per hour, proving it was not enough to damage the taillight. That's what they're saying.
It knocked the snow off, but it wasn't sufficient to cause damage to his vehicle.
And he also said it couldn't have even done any damage to the taillight because it didn't overlap. But you be the judge, right? Or you be the juror. Tell me what you think. I've been reading the comments, and Odemara said that she was a juror last year for 2 weeks. Days are long, and I found it hard to stay focused at times. One thing is true. I never want my freedom on the hands of my peers after being in a jury. Ooh, that's scary. That's a lot, I'm trying to get to all the comments. I was going to get to some of them at the end because I think that's really important.
We then mapped that data onto Miss Reed's vehicle to look at where that height is. So you can see the only contact marks are down at the bumper level. I mentioned how that bumper sticks out. This is exactly where you'd expect it. So the only evidence of contact is nowhere near the upper taillight. I emphasize the word upper taillight because it is right in line with the lower taillight. But yet the lower taillight also was not broken. So again, 25 and a half, that's 24 right here, 25 and a half. That's 24 right here, 25, 25 and a half. That's right where that scuff mark was. It's also right at
I'm picking up what he's putting down, so to speak. I see it. I'm like, all right, okay, I guess fair enough. But I think when he noted there were no taillight fragments left behind in the driveway, now I had never noticed. It was snowing. That footage wasn't good. But when you're looking at those marks in the ground, I don't see any taillight. But the thing is, he's implying that the breakage occurred when hitting John O'Keefe, where the fragments were found later. But I have to say, even though I didn't see anything on the ground at John's, how do we know that it didn't crack it? Because the whole idea, and people are arguing, is that there was a crack in her taillight, that it wasn't completely broken and hanging off and falling off, and that someone took the opportunity knowing that she thought she might have hit something. Her friends were saying she might have hit something. She was saying she might have hit something. I don't know if her friends were saying, but like, who knows how her friends were dealing with the situation, telling her to shut up when she was trying to find him, that she's out of her mind. I mean, there's two ways to look at it, right? But on John's Ring camera, you would think when they enhanced the footage, you would see something on the ground if it did totally break. But as I pointed out, maybe it cracked. And both Carrie and Jen both said it was like cracked and there was a piece of metal maybe like hanging out a little bit that they were scared was going to get caught in their clothing. But I think a biggest part of the day came up when the third focus was introduced, that Dr. Welcher's third focus, and that was linking John O'Keefe's injuries to the Lexus. Now, he did an experiment. He was actually posing, and somebody said cosplaying as John O'Keefe. I was kind of taken aback by this. Is it distasteful? Well, I've read comments that it didn't go over well, that he didn't have to wear the same color shirt and the same shirt and the same hat and jeans, that it wasn't necessary. I kind of have to agree. But I also know that people are very visual. So maybe Dr. Welcher just thought it would help. Maybe he didn't want to look like himself. But I want to hear him talk about this because I think this was the pivotal moment, right?
Keith, he's 73 inches tall. That's 6 feet 1 inch tall. At this time, I was 220 pounds. Mr. O'Keefe, at the time of this incident, was 216 pounds. So I took measurements of myself. I'm actually wearing the same make and size shoes as Mr. O'Keefe, the same brand of jeans as Mr. O'Keefe, the same brand and size shirt of Mr. O'Keefe. You see the Lexus in the background. We have matched the height to the Lexus. What I'm showing here is both my height, and then keep in mind where the height of this wing is relative to my right eye.
Okay.
So now I'm wearing, in addition to the same shirt and shirt.
So I'm just making little points as we go. When he's standing next to it, and look where his arm is, I'm going to give him this. It looks like it matches up, but we're going to get into something else he said later. And then the wing on the top lining up to where John O'Keefe's eye might have been. And we know it was cut. We know that Karen said that John was holding her cocktail glass, which was found next to his body in the snow. So was he standing behind it? But then I was like, how does the wing impact John's right eye? Because I know you guys can't see me. Let me go big really quick because I think this is important to show. Okay. So he's standing next to the Lexus. What arm is he on? He's on. Oh, he's on his left arm. Okay. Or his right arm, sorry. He's on his right arm. I get confused. I'm thinking the jury's going to be really confused because I'm looking at a picture. Okay. So he's standing like this. He's holding a glass. It's his right arm. Alexis is right there. But I was thinking, how does his right eye get hit? Because I was like, okay, if a car hit me here, I would spin. But then I was thinking, okay, if it was going fast, maybe it happened all at once, like boom. And his eye goes forward, his head goes forward, and then his right eye hits. Plausible, plausible. Likely, I don't know. Plausible, maybe. The way it's set up here, but we're going to hear that. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's just go.
And shoes, same type of sweatshirt, and actually the same kind of baseball hat. We tried to determine the exact glass from the waterfall grill. Found out they were getting different ones at different times, but I ordered my glass from the same distributor that Waterfall Grill ordered their glasses from. So you can see in my right hand here, I have a glass. Here's a glass. It looks similar. It's from the same location. And then in the lower right photograph, what I've done is I've rolled up my sleeve, taken the sweatshirt off, and I'm going to look at how this contact pattern lines up. So the first set of slides, I'm simply standing next to the Lexus. We know we have a broken taillight. We know how scratches on Mr. O'Keefe's arm. I'm seeing how those may or may not relate to the height and position of the taillight.
Dr. Welcher, if you could back up one slide, I have a question for you. In the middle photograph, at the top of the Lexus, there's like a rim. What do you call that?
I call it a wind wing. I mean, it could be a wing.
Okay.
A spoiler.
Thank
I call it a spoiler.
Air dam would be another. Okay.
Okay,
so,
wait, I have to pause it here. All right. So he's going to be using grease paint. It doesn't dry. So this is so the jury can actually see where on his arm is going to be impacted. I think it's a good idea in theory. But then when you're putting it into practice, I was like, uh-oh, I don't know. But what they're trying to prove is that the cuts on John's arm came from the taillight cracking into his skin. And I have seen some funny memes today about this. It probably wasn't the best choice. Let me just say that. Probably wasn't the best choice. But he's lining up. You see how he's lining up? Look at the right of my screen. There's John O'Keefe's arm. And he's sort of showing, but he's not going down to the wrist. Because there's some lower on John.
I then set about to do a little bit of testing with the Lexus. The first test you're going to see is me just walking backwards. Or
Did y'all see the video? I recorded on my phone today. I don't think at the end of this video, I'll get my phone and I'll show it to you.
actually sideways into the Lexus. What I've done is I've painted the Lexus right rear tail light with what's called grease paint. Kind of sort of like paint, but it doesn't dry. And then I have backed up sideways, side shuffled into the Lexus with my arm out, see what the damage pattern looks like. Or basically where someone of Mr. O'Keefe's height's arm would contact the rear tail light. So then what you see is I've shown the photographs again. I show the paint transfer onto my arm. The yellow grease paint on my hand was to show where my hand would hit the tail light. And so just kind of me walking slowly sideways into it, the approximate location of the tail light, and I'll line it up with the broken tail light in a second, lines up with the approximate location of the lacerations on Mr. O'Keefe's arm.
But the yellow had me thrown off for a minute because I remember the medical examiner saying that the bruise on his hand was actually from the IV. So I was like, why does he have to go that far? I'm looking at all your comments and I found out that I can favorite them. So then later I can go back at the end and I can go through all your comments because some of them are really interesting and I'm a grizzly too.
Dr. Welcher, let me ask you a question. When you're engaging in these demonstrations, are you attempting to try to show exactly how Mr. O'Keefe was struck?
No. So we don't know exactly how he was struck. And pedestrian impacts are extremely sensitive to exact angles. And so where exactly your foot is, whether your foot's off the ground, can have an effect on where you end up after that. We just don't have enough information in this case to determine all that information. We know the taillight was broken. We know the glass was broken. We know we have.
Okay, that's the part I wanted you to hear. He was like, we don't have enough information to know all those things. So I'm like, ooh, that was not a good phrase for the jury, in my opinion, because saying that you don't know and like, oh, I don't know exactly where he was hit. We don't really have information on that. But you are going out of your way to demonstrate this. So they're getting totally different results until they find one that's right. And somebody made that point. They're getting all these different results. And he even said that until one kind of like fits their argument. And I didn't know about that. I was like, oh, I'm not sure about this experiment.
Have damage to the rear of the Lexus. We know we have lacerations in Mr. O'Keefe's arm. So I'm trying to see if there's any correlation between all those.
Well, can body posture on a clip or a side swipe collision change the trajectory or the injury?
Of course.
Can the way somebody moves or reacts before impact change it?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
What are other things that can change the trajectory of the person and the injuries?
So, for example, if you get hit and knocked off balance or clipped and knocked off balance, you can take additional steps. That'll affect how far your body travels. if you have 1 foot on the ground versus the other foot on the ground, affects how the body rotates. If your arm is at 90 degrees or 85 degrees, will affect the kinematics. We attempted to model different possibilities, and we're getting results that were all over the map.
Okay, did you hear that? He tried to model all these different possibilities and he got results that were all over the map. To a juror, that doesn't sound confident. That sounds like, well, wait a minute. You got all these different scenarios that happened, but you chose this scenario of an awkward arm because the arm is kind of weird. Like, we don't know if John was going like that, like drinking, throwing it into the grass, bringing it into the house. There's some really good points in the comments. I can't wait to get there, but let's finish this.
Small changes in the pedestrian position give you huge change in the output. And so from the tech stream data, we don't know exactly when in the tech stream data he was hit. So we don't even know the exact impact speed. In most pedestrian reconstructions, you typically have a point where the impact occurred, like where the person was, like in the crosswalk, for example, and they get hit and their tire leaves a rubber scruff. That's called the area of impact or point of impact. You then can look at how far they were thrown and using some laws of physics, calculate how fast the car had to be going. Well, we don't have that in this case.
Exactly. We don't have that in this case. We don't have a point of impact. So again, to me, it's not an argument, it's just a perspective. I'm like, well, if you don't have that in this case, then this case is different. It cannot be evaluated the same way as a case where you have an impact point. So they don't even know when he was hit. So all that text stream data they gave us, he doesn't even know when he was hit in that data. And I thought they were saying he was hit before his phone locked. So I just feel like there's reasonable doubt, and I hope I'm making sense, but he doesn't know when in that stream of her backing up or if anything. And then there was a comment, I was going to get to it later, but someone said, how do we know he didn't go inside? And then Karen was pissed, like, he's not coming out. F this. And she like went forward and then went back and then it just like got the snow off of her vehicle or something. I don't live in the place where it's winter and has snow. I don't know. If you're thinking that, the reason I like these comments and why I want to do these lives, if you're thinking that, a juror has to be thinking that. But we don't have a point of impact. We don't know where he was standing if and when he was hit. So to me, it means reasonable doubt. If I was on a jury, I wouldn't be able to send someone to prison or, decide if someone's guilty when there's reasonable doubt there. But he even said, he clarified that his experiments were exploratory. They're not exact replications. And there's variations that are possible, and especially in a pedestrian impact.
We don't know exactly where Mr. O'Keefe was on the roadway when this happened. Sorry, I'm about to go to the next slide.
Without having an exact point of impact or an exact speed or an exact body position, are you able to specifically replicate the actual collision and the way Mr. O'Keefe's body would move?
Exactly replicate? No. And again, in terms of how he would move, again, we don't know where exactly on the roadway he started. So in terms of how he moved, that's a function of where he started. We don't know if when he was clipped, he took an additional step before falling backwards. So that will change how far you are off the roadway. So the impact, which you'll see in a second, even at 2 miles an hour, will induce rotation of the body. So depending on the speed, the higher the speed, the more rotation.
So we're back to rotation. So Trooper Paul was right. He spun around. He was spinning. But that is where this argument kind of lost me. Well, let's have him demonstrate, shall we? He's going to show you, in my opinion, a very unnatural way to stand. I just had to point that out. And we're going to go to the next slide, so to speak. It's not a slide, but it's where we are. Is he holding the cup that way? I don't know. But it just looks robotic to me on the top left. If you see him standing behind the vehicle, it's interesting. But I understand what he's trying to do. Let's just play it and we're going to talk about the Blue Man Group and everything else that's in the comments.
So now I said, okay, that was me walking into the car. Let's have the car drive into me. I did this at
Hang on, it's like not clear. So let me go back one little bit.
arm.
Okay.
Here's the post-contact
Did we
scuffing on
miss
the
him
tail
running
light.
into it? Hold on.
Here's a picture of Miss Reed's vehicle on the right-hand side.
What the heck?
Of the Lexus, there's like a rim.
To do a little bit of testing with the Lexus. The first test you're going to see is
Oh, here it
me
is.
just walking backwards or actually sideways into the Lexus. What I've done is I've painted.
Did we see that already? I think
the
we did.
Lexus
I think I'm
right
just
rear
forgetting what
tail
I
light.
saw.
It's called grease paint. Kind of sort of like paint, but it doesn't dry. And then I have backed up sideways, side shuffled.
Yeah, we saw
into-
that. Okay, now he's going to do this. I'm sorry that I moved it back. See, if my brain is doing that, I think the jurors are probably like, "Oh, what happened?" Okay, here it goes. Now it's going to drive into him.
Picture of Miss Reed's vehicle on the right-hand side. So now I said, okay, that was me walking into the car. Let's have the car drive into me. I did this at very low speeds. And you'll see, and we'll throw this from two different angles.
YouTube, why are you being weird? It's like blurry.
That's me showing I'm doing test 2.
Oof. I wouldn't want to get hit regardless of what the speed was. Here's another
This
angle.
is from a camera that we have pointing down at it. This is the speed. You'll see it's only about a 2-mile-an-hour impact. But even a 2-mile-an-hour impact redirects me back and causes me to rotate and take a step.
Where's he going? Is he pretending to... Oh, no, they clarified he's not pretending to be John right now. Because I was like, oh, is he pretending to talk to Karen and then walk to the back? But why would you walk to the back? So that's not part of this.
Yes.
And that's exactly why they probably had a sidebar. I caught the same thing. Like, wait a minute. Is this some kind of reenactment? I don't like the way this is looking for the law. Okay. I went forward here after the sidebar. This was like a pretty long sidebar. But here we go.
So again, this is the view from behind. Just to avoid the confusion, I will start it here.
Yep. Because that was confusing. Oh. Ooh. Okay.
What speed is the car traveling?
You can see it. About 2 miles an hour.
Okay.
Excuse me, Your Honor, that is the objection that we spoke about.
Oh,
and that I
okay.
would like to
All right, so that's noted, Mr. Larson.
I did notice there was a lot of objections and there were a lot that were sustained. I don't know what you want to take from that, but remember the jury is listening to that. But in my opinion, my legal analysis, so to speak, from my background, I would say that it's probably because Brennan keeps leading the witness. Instead of just asking him questions and letting him speak, he's leading his witness. And I told you, he's usually on the defense. So that's probably why he doesn't remember that he can't lead them. He's just, they keep objecting. But a lot of things were also struck from the record. And that's important to me. That was a 10-minute sidebar there. But let's get back into it because I think this is the part I wanted to show you.
So similar to the other test, this is the post-contact image of the transfers onto my arm. Actually, the yellow paint you can see from my hand is here. This is from the arm and forearm. Here's the paint transfer pattern.
At this point, I feel like he lost the jury. This is my opinion. But I was like, how? How would it break into all those pieces? Now, my husband made a good point. He was like, well, we played devil's advocate with each other. So he's like, well, how old's the car? Was it sitting in the sun? Polycarbonate can get to the point where it cracks really easily. And I don't know how that is for the snow. So I've seen people take a hammer to these lights and not break it, but I don't know like the chemical makeup of her taillight at the time, if it was more easily breakable for some kind of condition or weather or something, but I wouldn't assume that. But this is where I think he lost the jury because it was almost like he's trying too hard because I'm looking at John's injuries and I'm like, he probably didn't have to put the yellow one there because that was from the IV. But you tell me, I only have one perspective, right? Not one, but I'm only one person with one viewpoint of everything. But he's also going to show a hip level scuff on the Lexus rear panel that aligns with John O'Keefe's hip height, also showing that the collision could happen because apparently there was a bruise on his right knee. So it like hit him. His right knee was also next to the car. I will say, them keep saying that there's a right side injury with the way he's standing, that would line up. So I kept going back and forth. I was like, wait, okay, he's trying to account for the right knee bruise, the eye laceration. I already talked about that. But then he goes over 34 Fairview and he says, well, here, let's just play it. Sorry, I always get ahead of myself. Here we go. See that?
Red plastic, clear plastic. There, his point of rest was indicated to be 7 feet off the roadway. There was a sneaker that was found near the curb.
What he's doing is he's linking all the evidence to where it happened, right? So all the evidence we've already seen before. But here's the thing. Some people think it's been planted. So we don't know how it got there, right? Was it because of the accident? It's right where his body was, but did someone possibly who knew where his body was, right? Did they put these items there? I don't know. I think there's reasonable doubt there, but listen to what he's saying.
There were various fragments of taillight found in the snow on the morning of the incident, as to the afternoon of the incident.
Could you zoom in on those photos so that we can see the dates?
The date?
Yes.
Oh, sure. So January 29th at 5:46 p.m. This one's at 5:52. One's at 5:59. This one down here is at 5:46. So there were various fragments of the taillight that were ultimately pieced back together and determined to be from Miss Reed's right rear taillight. Additional evidence was found. This is taken on the afternoon of the accident, again around 5:50 p.m.
Could you zoom in, please, for us?
Sure. So what you see
The
here
shoe, right?
Was later identified as Mr. O'Keefe's right shoe.
The placement of his shoe did have me pause. And I was like, okay, let me think about this. This is like me and you are friends. We're sitting on my couch. We're having maybe a little glass of wine. We're talking. And I say, okay, he gets out of the car. He walks around. He's standing on the sidewalk. He's maybe checking his phone because Jen McCabe, I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you over here. Jen McCabe is texting him. And then she goes forward. She goes backwards, whether intentional or not. She hits him. I got hit by a car. I did fly out of one of my shoes, not both, but not my shoes. Sorry. I was in like roller skates and like part of it broke off and I sort of flew. So I can see how someone's shoe, because mine were like almost attached with, more force. I could see how someone's shoe could fly off. That's a very common thing in accidents that someone's shoe falls off. Common. So in my brain, I was like, okay, I can kind of see maybe he's on the road. He gets impacted. He flies forward. His shoe gets caught on the curb. Because look at the way it goes up. Remember I showed you that curb? It has a little slant in it. So could it hook on his shoe? What shoe is that? Is that his right shoe or his left shoe?
And this slide number, Dr. Welcher?
Yes, ma'am. 127.
Could you show us the time and date, please?
January
Thank you so much for your super chats. I see them coming in. I'm going to get there in 1 second when I pause.
29th at 5:50 p.m. So a series of photographs. Again, you can see on the right-hand photograph that this is the roadway, this is the curb. The grass will be up towards the top of the right image.
Okay.
On slide 127, the shoe is found, up against, in the roadway, up against the edge of the curb. Baseball hat. Again, acquired a same baseball hat. Baseball hat was also found in the snow. You can see.
I want you, before you move ahead,
We're going to get to that little picture he showed of the body up on the screen real quick. I did want to thank, because super chats are so important to me. I know you guys go out of your way to do that, and I appreciate it so much. True Crime Lullabies, I love the name. And wow, that's a big one. Thank you so much. That's so sweet of you. I really appreciate that. And also, Phoenix Kel said, "Thank you for taking time for us, Kimber. Love you and your thorough research. I really appreciate that." I feel like there was another comment from True Crime Lullabies that I saw in here. I think I favorited it somewhere, but I'll get to it. I promise. I'm going to put it up on the screen. Let me just go back because this is important really quick. We're almost done, and then we can talk and chit chat about what we saw. This was important. He's going to talk about some of the most common places that pedestrians get hit on their bodies when you get in a pedestrian collision with a car.
Slide 130.
can you enlarge that and explain to us what that is?
Sure. So at the bottom, it indicates where it's from. So this was from a presentation I gave looking at pedestrian injury biomechanics back in 2005. And what it's showing is where what are the most common injuries in pedestrian impacts. So what it shows is head injuries are the most common injury in pedestrian impacts. So on the right-hand side, it's all injuries. You can see of all the individual study, the highest prevalence or highest or most common injury was head injuries. In those that sustained severe life-threatening injuries, again, the highest was also head injuries. So head injuries are very commonly associated with pedestrian impacts.
I understand where he's coming from. This is medical and biomechanical research, and it illustrates the common injuries and severe head injuries, common, consistent with John O'Keefe's skull fracture and the patterns of it, right? But our heads as we fall, I mean, come on, I have a baby, okay? It's heavy. Your head, I mean, all of our body is. In a baby, their heads are bigger, right? But that tends to be the portion that does get injured in all kinds of different falls and collisions. And so it didn't really convince me of anything more than something else. Now, I will let you know, they accidentally showed John deceased on the medical examiner's table, and they did not edit it out. And it kind of scared me for a minute, even though I already saw it before. They did show that. I don't want to show it here. Hang on. Let me go forward so I don't show it. There was another sidebar. I think they were removing the headings on different slides after this. And I kind of peeked over, and guess what? One of them that was in Leslie's hand was the one of John on the autopsy table. But when they came back, Dr. Welcher shared analysis that showed getting punched versus falling backwards, just a plain fall injury. And he emphasized that John O'Keefe's injury pattern was more aligned with the fall because there was no facial fractures. Like he's saying somebody did not punch him in the face. So this would support the vehicle impact because he's got the cuts and he's got the bruises. But I've always been under the impression, what if he was pushed? His chest, like your chest is muscular, it's kind of more robust. Like I feel like, you body check someone or something. If it's slippery ground, we don't know the scenario. There's a lot of different theories going out there, but it doesn't necessarily mean he got punched. But remember, eye laceration, eye laceration. Could that have happened a different way? Let me know in the comments because I'm interested to know how you feel. because y'all are smart. Like, you make my brain work harder. And especially when we are kind of in disagreement, and somebody put in the comments, it's fine. We can disagree. It's not mean to have a different opinion. And I want this channel to be okay with, people talking and having different opinions. But I don't know. Like, I don't think any medical doctor would be able to determine either way. Because remember, we've already heard from doctors. We don't know. We don't know.
Okay. So I will show you the dummy test I did. Watch when the
Oh, I forgot to tell you, he's going to be doing a drop test with a crash test dummy. A lot of people said, why didn't they use dummies for the other part? They could have put a dummy there and rammed a car with it. And I'm like, right, why didn't he do that? But he's going to show you head impacts from falls as short as 40 inches, I think, that they could cause severe skull fractures. Again, this reinforces the plausibility that John O'Keefe got his head trauma from falling backwards on a hard surface after a vehicle hit him. This is what they're trying to prove.
shoulders hit the ground, then the head hits the ground, it creates kind of an arc path that will drag and slide objects up the head. So if you have something such as a baseball hat, it'll cause it to drag across the scalp, dragging it up to a similar location to where these abrasions are. So here's the testing. Again, this is like the crash test dummies you see on television. This is myself.
Sir, we're not seeing anything. Okay, here we go.
They're giving me similar instructions, telling them what we're going to do.
I want to move the closed captioning up here.
I said, and watch. Shoulders come in, then the head contacts the ground. What you see is
I can't even see it
if you
because they have
fall
a
backwards
label
and
on
land
this
on a
one.
very hard surface or hard surface, you'll get extremely high loads
That's why I like using a different feed, because they've got a banner on the bottom, so I can't really see what he just did.
on the head. If you compare that to data in the science, yeah.
Oh gosh,
Oh,
sorry.
sure.
I get scared because the autopsy photo is like floating around somewhere in this slide.
This chart up here?
Nope, on the next page.
Right.
You can enlarge it, tell us what it is before you get into the details.
Absolutely.
He has a funny slip up here, and I felt kind of bad for him, but he kind of lost me on the falling backward thing. Kind of lost me on that, but he really lost me on this next part.
So this is actually kind of a famous study that was published, one of the first studies looking at head fracture or skull fracture tolerances. So what you see, the portion at the back of your skull is called the occiput boner. So that bone, if you...
Sir, what? The occiput's boner? I died. I was like, excuse me? But the occiput is correct. It sounded weird, but not the boner part. But that is the back of your skull. So he got that correct. It was just, yeah, poor guy.
Put your hand on the back of your head is your occiput. So we're looking at
That's correct.
occiput impacts. And what you can see is that when they took cadaver skulls and dropped them from as low as 40 inches onto a hard surface, they were getting linear fractures. And you can see even at 40 inches, there is called a stellate fracture. Stellate means star-like. You get a fracture that goes out like a star.
Remember when Brennan wanted, oh my gosh, who was it? One of the medical witnesses, he said, was it like a star fracture? And I wondered why he was saying that. And now it makes sense because of this part.
So even at a 40-inch drop height, you have sufficient force when landing on a hard surface to cause skull fracture and a level 3 type skull fracture. So Mr. O'Keefe, again, is 73 inches tall. His occiput is about 4.6 inches down from the top of his skull. That means it would fall a total of about 73 minus 5 would be 68. So just under 6 feet. So 72, 4 inches under, so 5 foot, 8 inches is the fall height. what is data showing that even at upfall height as low as 40 inches onto hard surface, you can get fairly severe skull fractures.
Okay, just want to be careful not to show the autopsy photo because that would not be respectful in this moment. I just don't want to show that because he's accidentally going to pan over. So I wanted to stop it there. But as you can see, this is what he's saying in the end. And now he's going to say that based on all of this data, this was very extensive physical evidence, his experimental testing, he said it, scientific literature, Dr. Welcher is going to conclude to a reasonable degree of engineering and scientific certainty. That's the phrase they have to use, these witnesses, that Karen Reed's Lexus struck John O'Keefe on January 29th, 2022 at approximately 12:32 a.m. and caused his injuries. That's what I wanted to play last, and then we want to talk about everything.
Okay, Dr. Welcher, let me ask you again. Based on your analysis, data available, reviews, study, based on the fact that you are an accident reconstructionist and a biomedical engineer, have you reached an opinion to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty whether the defendant's Lexus struck Mr. John O'Keefe on January 29, 2022, around 12:32 a.m.?
Yes.
And could you share the bases of your opinion before I ask you your ultimate opinion?
Sure. So again, you've seen my slide presentation. I've inspected the Lexus. I've looked at where it wasn't damaged. I've inspected the taillight. I got an exemplar Lexus. I ran lower speed contacts to verify that the injury pattern and location on the arm is consistent with the height and orientation of the taillight. I have looked at fracture tolerance data for falling backwards onto hard surfaces. I've looked at the metrics of where his injuries were and what injuries he didn't sustain. I've looked at the cell phone data, and then I've looked at Ms. Reed's interviews as well.
Based on all the evidence you considered, could you share with the jury what your opinion is to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty about whether the defendant's Lexus struck Mr. O'Keefe on January 29, 2022, around 12:32 a.m.?
Objection, Your Honor.
Going to remember.
I can answer? Yes, based on the totality of the evidence, DNA, everything I've talked about, that is consistent with that happening with a reasonable degree of scientific certainty. That is what happened.
Okay. And then there was,
Move to strike, Your
So
Honor.
I'm going to strike that. I want to see.
because he's like, that is what happened. And you can't make a definite statement like that. It's supposed to be his opinion. He's supposed to be like, in my opinion, that's what happened. Okay. So now that that's over, let me go back to full screen. I think there were positive things about this. I think the data was good. I think it was well thought out. There was a lot of visuals. They bought the same model SUV, kind of to the extreme. But I think that matters because it's showing they went all out. But then there are the cons. Number one, I think it was really hard to follow. I mean, I watched it 5 times. Granted, it was on like 2 times speed here and there. It was a bit much, especially the blue paint. I think that wasn't as scientific in my point of view. But now I want your thoughts, and I also want to go to I'm so glad I get to do this. So I favorited some of your comments that I wanted to bring back. Of course, we talked about being a grizzly. I'm a grizzly too. I love Gazella's channel. JBE asked, drunk driving at her blood alcohol level is illegal in Massachusetts because there was an back and forth about, what are the drinking laws? We know they were all drinking. And then Lala said, I absolutely believe she sort of gunned it and turned around and left, and she was pissed that John O'Keefe didn't come back out. Plausible. And that's why I like reading these. Courtney said, I've always been of that belief until this guy's testimony, and now I'm leaning on purpose. But again, there's that pesky reasonable doubt. Exactly. And I liked this one because JB said, Maz, you be a lawyer or a crime reporter. Hopefully she'll do something in the realm of what we do because she watches us all the time. But I'm going to be happy no matter what, as long as she's healthy. And then JB also said, yes, they were all drunk. he would be alive today if they weren't all drunk. Could be true, right? Even with the alternative theory, I believe that that could be true. And JB also said having differing opinions is not being unkind, unless someone's unkind about it, right? I don't want to foster an environment where people are scared to come here. Courtney said being so drunk could make you not recognize the alerts. Oh, this was a good point because I told you about my alerts. I'm always like, oh my gosh, on the side, it will say I went out of the lane. My husband's car tells me everything. It helped me from not hitting a car the other day. But right, I think her music was loud, somebody said. Yeah, JB said loud music, driving impaired, could cause her not to hear anything. Snow was coming down. Windshield wipers might have been on too. True. A for Anonymous said, had her vehicle potentially been on ice or snow, I can see why she would possibly go forward and back as well and have increased acceleration. Just a thought. I don't live in a snowy place. I've said that like 40 times, I think you know, but I don't understand how that works. If you're trying to like shake off the, my thing just gave me an alert that my battery's going to die. Hang on. And such an ADHD person. Hold on. I put the battery there, but I didn't plug it in. How funny. Okay. That's just a thought and it could be true, but I'm not from the winter area, so I don't know. JB said it's really not far from the curb to the flagpole. I agree. I don't think it is that far. To me, it looks plausible. Like I said, I'm going to give them credit where credit is due and I feel like it is plausible. Lala said, I mean, from my point of view, I say the tire tracks prove she hit his vehicle. See? So that's why it's important because jurors are going to come from all different points of view. And that's why it's interesting. Oh, and I wanted to say, I'm sorry about your baby that's sick. I hate when babies have colds. Lacey said, how many of the jurors in the courtroom are still awake during this data? That is a good point. And I think that's why I said, I believe the data was good and it was interesting, but I feel like it's going to get lost. And then A for Anonymous says, is this regarded as actual science? In fact, it seems just like a bunch of hypotheticals. I would say a mixture because some of it is science based, but at the end of the day, it's a scientific opinion or it's his opinion as a somebody said it's not biomechanical, it's biomedical that came out in trial today. And Courtney says it seems pretty factual to me, and that's what matters. It matters what the jury believes. I would like some more information about this if any of you guys are still here. Not to be crude, Marie said, but if you saw what just happened in London, a car can do damage at a low speed. That's scary. Graceful said, how can it impact enough to make him spin and break the light, but not break any bones? That is a good point. And if anyone has any answers to this, put them down below or put them in the chat and I'll get to them as well. But Amara said, this recreation reminded me of the expert in the staircase case who kept trying to get ways for the blood spatter from the case. Trying ways to get the blood spatter from that case with very questionable methods. I have not watched that one. I know you're probably like, what? But Amaris also said, I heard he is possibly the last witness from the Commonwealth. Does anyone know? I think they said it was. I haven't seen what happened today. I would have a better point of view if I did. And then Coffee said, crazy not to call Proctor. I mean, why would they? Everything he did was bad. Everything he said was terrible. Although I have to say, the see you next Tuesday word in Boston, a lot of people do say that word. If you don't know what I'm talking about, starts with a C, ends with a T, has 4 letters. But it's not right to say for a civilian that you're investigating their case. Phoenix Cal said, are the footprints facing the opposite way to the shoe? I didn't see the footprints. I might have to go back. And now I'm going back to the regular chat. Those were favorites that I put up because I wanted to kind of get them out and kind of look at them. They're Jamazin, am I saying that right? They are trying too hard to hang this on her. How did he get the laceration on the back of his head if she injured her arm? You mean, well, he fell backwards, so they're assuming that the injuries from the arm came from the side and then he fell backwards. He like spun around and fell backwards. And Blue Bonnet, hi, I just heard you saw the live for the first time. I would love Gazella to do a case with me. I've been following her for a very long time. I've been a member of hers for a very long time. I love her. I feel like we're kind of like sisters from she's probably like weird. You have a parasocial relationship with me. But I have just been listening to her for so long with the Madeline Soto case. Madeline Soto case. And wow, what a case. So I've been listening to her for a long time. Even before that, I would love to do a deep dive with her in some way, shape, or form. She did comment on one of my videos, so I was really excited about that. And that was really sweet of her. I know it's hard to even know that you've been talked about in a video, but I'm sure one of you told her. And Cuffy said he is the last witness. Um, Mika Time said, why did no one see his body? The last person that left after 1 a.m. I don't know. That's hard to reconcile. And I think these things are really hard to reconcile. And that is why there's reasonable doubt. Um, but it's hard, and luckily none of us are on trial, right? So I like having these conversations. And some people might say, Kimber, why are you even doing this? Why do you care? My husband's like, why do you care so much about this? Why are you getting upset? Because I'm like voice texting to Courtney, and I was like, no, this is what, and we're kind of arguing, but it's like playful. I mean, she's my maid of honor for my wedding coming up. I love her to death. She's been with me for so long, but we don't see eye to eye, and that's okay. It's okay. But why I care? Well, I think that these trials are important. They're part of our society here in the United States, especially because this is where I live. And I want to know what's going on. And we have the right to know what's going on. And I think it's important for us to talk about these cases. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat. I think it's really important for us to talk about these cases. And I'm so glad that we are here. And I'm actually really proud that we can get along and not like be really rude to each other in the comments, but we can also leave comments up that disagree. That's really, really big. And I think that says a lot about this community that I'm building here and that we are building here. So I think I'm going to end it since it's been over 2 hours, which I can't even believe we're at 2:11. So give it a thumbs up if you haven't, because that's telling YouTube you like this video. And so Make of Time said, and this is how I feel, she could be any of us. She could be any of us. And that is profound. That is really a great way to end it. And JB said, congrats on your upcoming wedding. Thank you. Don't worry, I'm going to have content for everyone coming out. I posted a video today. If you need to sleep to something or you need to do something else tonight and you want to go back to my main channel, I did post a regular standalone. I don't know how long it was, but it was a video about a carnival killer, which was kind of crazy, really sad mother and daughter case. Um, I want to thank you all. I really appreciate you being here with me. You are all of my friends. I love this new little channel I'm creating, have created. I was so scared to do it, but I would not look back now because it's so great. I love the community, and I will see you tomorrow where we will discuss the cross examination. Thank you for your super chats. Thank you for being here with me. And if I miss anything in the chat, leave it in the comments later on the replay. Okay, I will see you tomorrow. Bye, everyone.